All right. Hi, everybody.
Hello, hello.
From Houston, Texas. Stu and I are here with some really exciting stuff going on.
Yeah. So I guess a little bit of backstory. So Craig and I came to Houston because we were invited by Scott Stripling. Now, if that name sounds familiar to you, it's because Scott was an archaeologist that we interviewed for Searching for a King, and we were talking about Shiloh at the time. Well, he reached out to us and said, hey, we've got a big announcement that we're going to make about something that was discovered in Israel. And so we made the decision to travel down here with the help of our donors. Thank you for that.
Yes.
And we want to share that with you. We want to share the announcement with you.
Yeah, so if you guys have been following us for long, this isn't typical for us. Usually we have months to plan.
Right.
But this was an opportunity that was presented to Stu and to myself just a few days ago. And in the world of archaeology, when they say we're ready to have a press conference about a major discovery, something big is going to happen.
Yeah.
And we love Scott. We love the work that they at the Associates for Biblical Research do. And so we did. We reached out to our donors and asked for their help, and several stepped up, and here we are. So let's get into it. Today has been an exciting day.
It has been. So as Craig mentioned, there was a press conference this morning, and Scott announced that they discovered a piece in December of 2019 at Mount Ebal in Israel. Now, Mount Ebal is mentioned in Deuteronomy chapter 27 and again in Joshua chapter 8 as being the mountain of the curse. And if you are familiar, when the Israelites came into Israel, they had a ceremony, really what it was, where the curses were announced from Mount Ebal, and then the blessings were announced from Mount Gerizim, which is right next to Mount Ebal. Well, they built an altar on top of Mount Ebal, and it was excavated back in the 1980s. And Scott got permission to take a team in there and actually not do an excavation, but do a wet sift through the dump piles from that older excavation.
It's a discarded material.
This is discarded.
That another very thorough archaeologist had done a dig there. But as with anything, they find what they think is interesting, and then they discard the rest. Well, there were piles of discarded material.
That's right.
That Scott was able to look through.
Yes, and they only looked through 30% of it, but they found a piece in there. It's not very big. I don't know, Craig, if you've got the picture to pull up here. But this is the piece right here, and it only measures, I think he said about an inch square. It's like 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters. But evidently he recognized it, and several of them on the team recognized it right away as being a curse tablet. And so they took it and they tried to open it. They couldn't open it. It's made out of lead, and so they've sent it off, or they did send it off to Prague in the Czech Republic to have it scanned. And so it went through this extremely detailed scanning process to reveal 40 characters of Hebrew text. This is an ancient Hebrew text that it's pretty amazing what they say that it was on it. So go ahead.
We don't want to steal his thunder, but the idea that they found this years ago, and they knew if they were to have opened the thing up, they likely would have destroyed the internal contents of it. So if there were writing, they wouldn't know. And the technology is now available. They've been able to do these high-resolution scans,
I think
almost X-ray type of scans.
I think so. Make a 3D model of it.
And then they were able to identify Hebrew characters on the inside of this thing. And it's what those things say that has got the world of archaeology and history all abuzz today.
It is. And so we've got a clip from Scott at the press conference that we're going to play for you. It's about a minute and a half. He goes into explanation about finding it, what it is, and then when we come back, we'll tell you what was on that tablet.
All right. This is Scott during the press conference today in Houston.
I immediately recognized what we had. We call this a defixio, or a cursed tablet, because many of these are known. We know what they are. Frankie recognized it, I recognized it, and Abigail Levitt, who was the assistant director there with me, we all knew that we had a cursed tablet from the site of the curse mentioned in the Bible, so this was terribly exciting. We could see there were glyptic markings on the outside, but of course we didn't know if we would be able to recover those markings. My first thought was that one can't scan through lead. When they give you x-rays, you go to the doctor, they always put this lead on you, and I'm thinking, how are we ever going to be able to scan through this? But we ultimately were able to find a lab in Prague that had expertise. Thousands of scans were done on the tablet in 2 different settings, so that then with extensive post-processing of those images, we were finally able to begin to see letters emerge. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, this is a 10. It doesn't get any bigger than this. We talk about verisimilitude, or a consistency between what we read in a text and what we find in the material culture, that correlation. It doesn't get any better than this. This is what if the text were true, this is what you would anticipate finding, and indeed it is what we found.
So that was the announcement they made today.
I mean, that's a pretty big deal. You know, when we talked to Scott afterwards, we did an interview with him, and, you know, we were like, we know that you don't want to overhype something or over drama.
Right.
And, you know, I said, how big of a deal is this? And like he said in there, this is a huge deal. It's a 10.
It's a 10. And so you could mention things like the Dead Sea Scrolls to your average person, and they would understand how significant that was to helping to validate the biblical text.
Yeah.
Right? That has been the discussion here today, is putting this on a similar level. That the fact that Yahweh was mentioned at such an early date.
Yeah.
The fact that Hebrew text, which there are many, apparently many historians and scholars who try to discount the whole concept of Moses having written the Pentateuch because, oh, well, the Hebrews didn't even have a viable alphabet back then. They didn't have writing that would allow him to write something like that. The discovery of this from the late Bronze Age would throw those criticisms to the side.
It does, and you know, and you mentioned the name of God. I didn't hear the clip if he actually said what was in it.
Okay.
But here is the actual. This was what they found written on the tablet. It says, "Cursed, cursed, cursed, cursed by the God Yahweh. You will die cursed. Cursed you will surely die. Cursed by Yahweh. Cursed, cursed, cursed." It's a lot of cursed. But basically, as Craig mentioned, the fact that it mentions Yahweh twice in this text, it was found in Israel, it was found in the late Bronze Age, which is a big deal because there were people that didn't even think the Israelites were in this land at this period of time. It does so much for the Bible and for dating the Bible, because this also points to an earlier dynasty of leaving Exodus, or the Exodus from Egypt, because that would have been during the same period of time. So there's just so many things that I think are going to be unpacked over the coming weeks with this discovery, and it points forward and it points backward. Last night, Craig and I, we were meeting with our research team to discuss, okay, what are the things we really want to hit on for this press conference today? And I think I remember asking, I said, so really kind of put this in perspective, how big of a deal is this? And somebody said, this is a big deal. This is a really big deal because of the fact that it points backward and gives us a better idea of the date of the Exodus from Egypt, and then it points forward to the Israelites being in this land. It kind of plants a flag.
It really does.
In a place and in a time in history.
Yeah.
So,
which before there had not been. So it had been easy for skeptics to make very broad claims criticizing the Bible and the biblical history by saying, well, we don't have proof that they were ever in the land that early. We don't have proof that they had an adequate enough language. there's an article here from the Times of Israel. So this is a big deal, and it's being reported on now all over the world. But the Times of Israel put it this way. They said, if the late Bronze Age date is verified, this tiny 2 centimeter by 2 centimeter folded lead curse tablet may be one of the greatest archaeological discoveries ever.
That's huge.
It would be the first attested use of the name of God in the land of Israel and would set the clock back on proven Israelite literacy by several centuries, showing that the Israelites were literate when they entered the Holy Land and therefore could have written the Bible as some of the events and documents took place.
Yeah, yeah.
And so this has been just an exciting, really exciting day. It's been good for us to be able to talk with Scott again, to meet more members of his team. Many of the individuals who were there at the dig site when they discovered this were there, and we got to talk with and interview one of them. But then to also just, what did you think about the feel of the room and the attitude and vibe of the room?
There's a lot of excitement. You could feel the energy in the room, and there was a lot of media outlets that were there, and everybody was really just excited to see what that announcement was going to be and see what that discovery was going to be. And as Craig mentioned, I mean, this is already starting to have ripples around the world. I mean, I'm looking at the Times of Israel's website right now. It's on the front page of the website. I mean, like, that's a big deal. And just even in the secular news world, to make it onto the front page of a newspaper or to be a top story, that's a big deal. But this is really going to have some ripples beyond just, a couple of little circles here and there. This is going to be, so.
And so why are we here? There's a variety of reasons. One, what we do at Appian Media is about adding validity and visuals to the biblical text. And so this is right up our alley. It's a little different
than
the approach
format,
that we've taken. But I will tell you that we were able to not only attend the press conference, but we were able to interview one of the individuals at the site, and then we were allowed an interview with Scott afterwards and asked him about the discovery and also some other questions about a potential new series that we're working on that we'll be excited to announce in the coming months. But it isn't just, and everyone's thinking, oh, you're going to do something about Joshua now.
Right.
Like Stu said, this has repercussions forward and backward. And what this means for the validity of the biblical text, we are excited to delve into.
Well, and I asked the question a couple of times to a couple of different people, for the person sitting at home, for honestly the child, the teenager that's studying their Bible and going, why does this book matter to me? It seems like a dusty old book to me. Well, guess what? We're making new discoveries about it. And it's, like Craig mentioned, it's adding to the validity. And so, I know for us personally, it's faith affirming. We sit in the room and we get the privilege of listening to these archaeologists make this discovery and go, oh my goodness, do you realize how important this is for the Bible? And we want to bring that to everybody. Because we know the power of this book, and we want everybody to feel that power. And so, being here, doing the work that we do, this is part of it.
And you were able. You talked with Scott a little bit and heard from a previous video that he did that the archaeologists who discovered there's more at Mount Ebal than just this tablet, right? In Joshua, you read about, and in Deuteronomy, you read about that they built an altar there of uncut stones. Covered in plaster. The Bible describes it that way. And they have found an altar there of uncut stones, and they have found plaster nearby.
Yeah.
And apparently that plaster is being analyzed right now.
Yeah.
But you said that Scott mentioned that one of the individuals that discovered that altar, that changed his perspective.
It did. So, Zertal is the archaeologist who actually excavated the site in the 80s, and he was not a believer. He came at it from, I guess, a kind of pessimist. I don't know. He came at it from skeptical, holding the Bible, kind of at bay as he was doing his excavation. Well, by the end, evidently, he said, "I have to use this book as a historical document to help with the excavation," and he everything lined up just the way the book said. And it did. It changed his perspective, and he started using the Bible as this document to verify things. And evidently, everybody that he worked with was like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing?" And he's like, "I've got to,
because it's here.
It's here. I can't argue against it." And so those are the kinds of stories. It's powerful to see people who actually thought one way and then completely made a 180 when they went. Yeah.
So what we do with Appian is we're kind of coming at it twofold, and we really kind of struck on something important, I think, when we shot Searching for a King, that first episode. If you haven't seen it with Scott Stripling, he takes us to Shiloh, which he was a huge part of that. He was the director of excavation there. But we want to not only show you the places, but let's talk about the proofs and evidences that are still very much coming up out of the ground that really solidify the biblical text. Scott has said only 5% of the lands of the Bible have been excavated. 95% of it has not been touched.
And if you want to talk about percentages, as you mentioned, in Searching for a King, only 5% has been excavated. Only 30% of these dump piles at this site have been excavated. And so he is just wildly excited about the potential of other discoveries that can be made when you start to, that's not very much.
Well, and you think about what has already been found, the impressive things that have already been found with only 5%. It's staggering. So we're going to continue to follow this.
It's developing.
It is developing, and they have already said later this summer, not only was there text on the inside folded, but there's text on both sides of the outside, and they're still working, analyzing as to what those letters represent. I got the impression that it was equally as exciting as to what was on the outside as well. So later this summer, it sounds like they plan to announce that. But this is very helpful and very beneficial to students of the Bible, to students of history, and to the mission that we've committed ourselves to with Appian Media to help bring the Bible to life and help people understand how real and powerful and meaningful it is.
Yeah, it's true. So, well, that's what we're going to leave it at that, and we're going to be traveling home today. But this is, we've been here in Houston, and we're excited to bring this to you. So stay tuned for a lot of new stuff coming out.
All right. Thank you, guys.